Oh yeah, my sister, this coming a yawa. You don't do. After the election, where them do, we still they wait for the change, All the promise when they make, they don't be like saying a fake, Where the money, where the food, As everybody want improve, Since you come, no tears and pain, We don't tire to complain, the bad way you've been do. You don't turn Nigeria into two. 97% and 5%. You know been talk like president. They rule Nigeria with sentiment. And take your office to revenge. Oh yeah now, Oga Buhari, we dey beg you. Let Nigeria no go scatter for your head, yo. Yes, after the election, where them do, we still they wait to see the change, yo. Cause all the promise when they make, they don't be like saying a fake, yo. And where the money, where the food, Nigerian people want improve. But since you come, not tears and pain, we don't tire to complain, No employment for the youth, and security no improve. Inflation don't they hit the roof. Still government no they say the truth. Oh yeah, my brother, this change now yawa. We don't do this suffer. Pray God for Nigeria. Oh yeah, my sister, this coming a yawa. You don't do this suffer. We pray God for Nigeria. After the election, where them do, we still they wait to see the change. Cause all the promise when they make, don't they be like saying a fake you. Where the money, where the food, Nigerian people want improve. But since you come, not tears and pain, we don't tire to complain, See us economy just the fall, but it's just the travel around the world. I be your office there for sky, When your time for working, they take the fly. We don't give you the vote, but you take them. Certificate is certificate. Ababa Buhari, election criminal. I make you collect and you hail them. The Suki collect you, they jail them. Ababa Buhari, you the partial. After the election, where them do, we still they wait for the change. All the promise when they make, they don't be like saying a fake. Where the money, where the food, Cause everybody want improve. Since you come, no tears and pain, we don't tire to complain, Only you and your people, they chop all the loot where you gather. Now enjoyment today, you know come presidency to suffer. You rule Nigeria like saying a war. You fight corruption, they break the law. Worry is better, you withdraw. And the blame Jonathan for all of your flaws. Jonathan don't give you the power. Man, we don't like you, wahala. You don't believe in your policy, pack up and let us be. After the election, where them do, we still they wait to see the change, Cause all the promise when they make, they don't be like saying a fake, Where the money, where the food, Nigerian people want improve. But since you come, not tears and pain, we don't tire to complain,
So I'll continue in English, and I want to thank you very, very heartily for this warm welcome and the presence in particular of these promising looks, the future, the children. Thank you so much for coming out to welcome me. And I should also apologize that the other time I had to turn around halfway. We got stuck in traffic. Well, I don't have to tell you about the traffic here. I thought that was the worst day. Today was even worse, which is one of the reasons why I must leave early, because I've added 1 hour to the return time, to the amount of time it took to get here. That road is something else. It's an epic journey. However, I know slow by slow, as they say, everything will return to normal. As you've been told, I'm not a stranger here. On the contrary, I have a very remarkable bond with Badagry, which I don't often talk about. But sometimes I speak of my being on the second round of my proverbial cat's lives. One of those expended moments was when I was alone on Badagry Beach. I was teaching at Unilag, and I used to come here because of the quiet, the peace, and work, swim, buy roasted fish, and just be in a certain corner of the beach. And one day I went swimming, and I very nearly did not come back. Still, I managed. So I have that very, very special bond with Badagry. Badagry owes me one life, because that was a narrow escape. And of course, since then, I've been here on far more enjoyable trips, productive, exciting trips, cultural. I brought a team here. We stayed at ASCOM and produced a play. We lived here. I've been on a number of festivals. I've interacted, as you heard, with some of the artists and cultural directors here. So I know Badagry pretty well. And of course, my younger friend Benga used to be a ballet around here. It's distressing to see what's been happening to Badagry since I was last here. But once again, one can only hope that the Badagry one used to know will be brought back to life in all its beauty, its cultural magnificence, its history, and its very inspirational ambience. And among those who will do that work, it's my young friend there, Femi Koka, the artist, a very creative, energetic, and restless personality. It's wonderful that we're able to come here together today. Called a coalition. Were locked out when they wanted to meet to discuss the security issues of this nation. Contrary to what many people thought, I was not part of that meeting. I was never invited, and I didn't even know that any such meeting was taking place. But I've since read in the papers that I was locked out. You can't get locked out of where you never were or where you never attempted to be. It's part of these heavy rumors, and unfortunately, many people got exercised by it. But I want to stress this. I want to use this opportunity, this open air, unlockable space, to say that if I had been invited, I would have been there, because we were discussing serious issues. They were serious people. We were discussing issues which concern all of us, whether we're professors, clerics, children, artists, technocrats. Every single individual in this nation is exercised by the security problem. And this government should learn, to not merely tolerate, but to assist any group of people who want to come together to discuss such issues and offer possibilities of redress. I have taken part, in fact, in a few like that, and thank goodness nobody came to try and lock me out of that hole. But I must stress once again that one of the beauties of existence is the ability to express oneself. And it's also a fundamental human right which we cannot compromise. And it's important to send this strong message to this government and to the security services to stop trying to muzzle people when they come together to exchange ideas. You're reducing them as human beings, and you're also reducing yourselves as human beings because it means that you are afraid. You're afraid to listen. And those who are afraid to listen usually are guilty people. That's why they do not want to listen. And so once again, I wish to use this opportunity, which is an occasion of culture, of intellection, of creativity, to re-emphasize the fact, this simple truth, that creativity takes place in an atmosphere of absolute freedom. And the reduction of the freedom of any one of us, however small, however minor, however quote-unquote unimportant, the reduction of the rights to expression of any one of us is an infringement and assault on the right of all of us, whether we're part of that particular exercise or not. Having said that, I wish to thank Femi Koka and this community for receiving me and also for coming out to join in this event which honors my birthday and, in fact, which honors my existence. A very valiant and creative effort has been made to narrate my trajectory, through a series, a collage of moments in my existence, with quotations, with parallel sayings by other people. But I want to caution you. I want to use this opportunity again to caution everyone. You see, it's not only, unfortunately, it's not only governments which misbehave. We ourselves, we have a tendency to behave. Sometimes the people are their own worst enemies. They betray themselves. They reduce their own dignity, their own self-worth. And they bring some of us to the point where we begin to despise even our own people, to hold them in contempt. Now, among some of the quotations attributed to me, that marvelous exhibition, is something which I never said. But people believed it because they read it. They read it on what is supposed to be an empowering medium, the social media. They read it there and they believed that it was true. But no, I must warn you, sometimes on social media you will even see framed quotes from me with my name and my photograph, with statements totally plucked out of thin air, or statements which represent what those people want to say, but they lack the courage to say it. And so, like cowards and contemptible nitwits, they steal the identity of other people. That is one extract. It may sound negative, but it's a very positive one because it provides me with a teaching platform, and I wish to profit by it. And the lesson for today is to ask all of you to be very, very careful what you believe, even when you read such material on the social media, or sometimes even in the papers. Because in this country, we have a most facile multiplying effect. When somebody hears something, he puts it immediately on the internet, it spreads. An industry begins. People are commenting on something which never existed, which was never said. Positive, doesn't matter. Negative, doesn't matter. Neutral, it doesn't matter. What matters is that somebody's identity has been stolen. and some contemptible cowards are responsible for stealing that individual's identity, putting words in his or her mouth, and thereby generating a totally non-existent and irrelevant contestation. It's like something which happened recently when somebody said that I took his seat on a plane. And just a simple, minor, trivial incident which was resolved there and there. Immediately, for 2 weeks, this became the topic. From a flight between Lagos and Abuja, it became a flight between Lagos and the United States. And so you had a situation where people were saying that I took somebody's, this kind of minor incident, which then preoccupies a nation out of all the problems worth discussing, worth confronting this nation. This ridiculous little incident becomes an occasion for all kinds of pontification based on a non-existent incident. Concerning that, let me just say to you, all my life, I have been giving my seat to those who are older than me, where required. But nobody really attempted to take that young man's seat. All the people around just said to him is that if he's sitting in the wrong seat, it's just a 1-hour flight, why don't you take the seat next to him? And that became a problem. I mean, what sort of a society do we live in, for God's sake? With such an incident becomes distorted, exaggerated, and becomes the fodder for masticating for over 2 weeks. The number of times people have taken my seat on a plane, and I virtually live in a plane, innumerable times. It's never a problem. If it's convenient, I sit where it's empty. I don't go on internet. I don't go on social media. Nobody hears about it. So what is wrong with Nigerians? What's wrong with their heads sometimes, I don't understand. I just do not understand. No matter, this is not a day for that. I'm just using that example, this thing which is in print.
Hello and welcome to The Arise interview. 60 glorious...
All of you. Sometimes when you read things, just read that material. Take it with a pinch of the salt, as we say. A pinch of salt. And then mull over it. Decide whether it makes sense. Decide whether the person who posted it has a private agenda. And the significance of this is that it reminds you that I've written books. When in doubt, read my books. If you don't have a copy and you can get hold of me and I can spare one, I'll send it to you. And don't just read my own books. Read other people's books.
A period of 45 days. We'll hear from one of Nigeria's most respected senior lawyers and human rights activist, Femi Falana, who has devoted his professional life to upholding and defending the rule of law. And later, we'll also hear from Mr. Falana about the other case that he's been closely involved with, the incarceration for years of the Shia leader Sheikh El-Zakzaky, despite a court order freeing him on bail, and the controversial decision to ban his pro-Iranian Shia group, the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, accusing it of unleashing violence and being an enemy of the state. The indefatigable Femi Falana in a moment. Now, the debate over the clash between the rule of law, the constitutional right to protest, and national security has been reignited by the bitterly pungent clashes between pro-democracy demonstrators and security forces in Nigeria over their right to protest against the government. The demonstrations had been organized by the pro-democracy and opposition campaigner Omoyele Sowore, who leads a movement he calls Revolution Now, a hashtag that's become the top Twitter trend in Nigeria and has been all week. Mr. Sowore was arrested over the weekend and accused of calling for the government's overthrow. And now those who have him in custody, Nigeria's secret police, the DSS, have been authorized by a court to detain him for a further 45 days. His supporters who attempted to demonstrate have been tear-gassed and many arrested. Well, now the screeching level of protests and criticisms that have trailed what many see as the government's heavy-handedness have gone up a notch, with one of Nigeria's most respected senior lawyers and human rights activist, Femi Falana, throwing his considerable leverage into the fray. Well, in a moment, we'll speak to Mr. Falana himself. But first, here he is, coming out in support of Mr. Sowore's cause.
The man who is accused of causing a revolution is in detention. And many Nigerians have asked me, but Femi, that young man went too far. How can you be calling for a revolution? I said, where is the offense? You know, since terrorism, under what section? Treason, under what section of the criminal code? I do hope that the government will not charge him. The government will not be stupid to charge Sowore. You know why? He has briefed me, and no, I'm telling you, in fairness to the SSA, when he told them yesterday, I won't make a statement unless I've spoken to my lawyer. And they say, who is your lawyer? Say, Femi Falana. In fairness to them, they asked him to phone me, and they gave him a phone. Of course, I knew they were monitoring the phone. And I told him, I hope they won't charge you. But if they do, some of the people in government will be our witnesses. You know why? No, you know why? One of them, I won't mention his name, in 2011, asked Nigerians to learn from the Egyptian revolution and be ready for a revolution in Nigeria.
I'm delighted to say that Mr. Femi Falana, human rights campaigner for many years and senior advocate of Nigeria, joins me now in the studio. Delighted to have you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And just listening to that clip there, I wonder who it was you were referring to about the person who spoke in 2011.
Well, as I did say, I won't go beyond that for now because I'm preparing my defense in case the case goes to court. Yes. And just to let the state know what I intend to do if this matter eventually ends up in a criminal court. But from the circumstances and the facts of this case, for me, I think it's going to be very difficult to establish a criminal case. More so that Mr. Sowore was arrested before the protest. So if he was going to cause a revolution on Monday, the 6th of August, you had already arrested him on Friday and kept him in detention.
But of course,
so you have already aborted the so-called revolution.
Yeah, but is it so much the act of carrying out a revolution or the intention to carry out a revolution?
The intention here doesn't constitute an offense. It doesn't. The mere declaration doesn't constitute a crime. I mean, it's like somebody who says, I'm a murderer. To pin him down, you need to show evidence that he has killed one or two people. Anybody can just say, oh, the law may just say maybe the man has just woken up from his bed. Maybe he was dreaming, you know. So in this particular case, a man says, I'm going to have a protest in a stadium, in a confined place. That is not how a revolution is waged. You know, if he has said, I'm going to have a protest, mobilize people, and then we are going to topple the government, then you may talk about treasonable felony. And the only case that has been successfully prosecuted, a couple of them, but the most notorious one is the one of the late Chief of Weapons in World War. There were witnesses gave evidence to the effect that even though treason had not been committed, but they were training people in Ghana. Nobody has said that in the case of Sowore. Even on the day of the protest, nobody was armed. So is that how to wage a revolution?
Do you think?
And like the late Chairman Mao said, a revolution is not a dinner party, but a total overthrow of a particular social order. I've read all the statements. I've even listened to the tapes. I haven't really seen anything beyond perhaps harassing the government.
So, based on what you've just said and based on your considerable knowledge of the law, why do you think the DSS and people like that, the Nigerian government? I mean, they have an attorney general, they have lawyers at their disposal. Don't they consult them before they take this sort of action?
Unfortunately, I mean, of course, there is no sitting attorney general now. But one thing I find extremely disturbing on the part of successive governments in Nigeria since 1999 is the failure, first of all, to appreciate that we have trodden this path before. And our courts have made definitive pronouncement recognizing the rights of Nigerians. The second one is, I really doubt if our governments are exposed to sound legal advice. Otherwise, some of these alleged criminal offenses are at best irritations that a government that is matured will simply ignore.
Absolutely.
But when you now try to say, oh, they were going to remove the government. I mean, a government that has just been re-elected, is that government so unpopular that a mere protest will now remove it? I don't understand it. And that's why I get worried and I try to engage people in government. Are you really serious, these guys? You know?
But do you think it is the government and specifically the presidency that orders the DSS to take this sort of action, or does the DSS do it on its own?
You see, it's going to be difficult to draw a line of dichotomy between the presidency and the state security service. More so, that you had statements from the presidency. I mean, for instance, one of the presidential spokespersons, in fact, the two of them have spoken on behalf of the president, saying that an offense of a monumental level was going to be committed. And when the protest was disrupted by the police, the presidency came out to congratulate Nigerians for not being part of the revolution. So where is the offense? I wonder. But I take the government, I try to study the statements that are oozing out of the presidency or the security service and the police to the effect that, oh, these guys had violated, had contravened the provisions of the criminal code with respect to treason or treasonable felony. Oh, they have also violated the law on terrorism, which is why this order was made today. But when you look at the provisions, the relevant provisions of those laws, and I have challenged the government, I haven't seen any offense committed. Section 37 of the Criminal Code Act provides that treason is committed when a person levies war on the country. And levying a war must go beyond a threat, must go beyond a protest. Terrorism, simply defined, and that is the way it is defined under our law, is achieving a political objective through violence. I haven't seen anybody who has accused Sowore or any of the protesters of violence. So you do not go to a rally, you can't charge a placard carrying person for treasonable felony or for terrorism. I do recall an incident. I think this was 1992. About 5 of us were detained in custody in Kuje prisons. After about a couple of months, we were arraigned before a chief magistrate court.
That was under the government of Babangida, right?
And were charged with treasonable felony.
Military government.
It was a joke. I mean, the late Chief Gani Fawemi, SAN and I had to defend ourselves and our colleagues. And we're laughing in the dark. What is this? What have we done? We went beyond Sowore. We had posted thousands of posters, printed them and pasted them all over the country, asking for an end, immediate end to military dictatorship in our country, i.e. the Babangida must go. He hadn't even announced election yet, but we just thought the transition program was unending and we're wasting so much public funds and we are taxpayers.
But of course that was an unconstitutional government.
Yes, even a military regime.
Yeah, which is different from what you've got today.
No, and we got the case thrown out. Because by the time we made our submissions, questioning even the morality of a military dictator charging us with treasonable felony, when in fact it should be standing trial for treason. In this case, yes, people have said that the election has just taken place.
They thought we'd better put a lid on this before it goes somewhere else.
An election has just taken place. Why are you doing this?
Right.
Again, in 2003, an election held in April that year. In September, General Muhammadu Buhari, the late Chuba Okadibu, and other ANPP leaders had a protest in Kano. And some of those who spoke there said, we are beginning a revolution today, and we're going to go around the country. The police violently disrupted the rally, just like this one. In the process, Dr. Chuba Okadibu inhaled some, alleged poisonous gas, tear gas. A couple of days later, it passed on. The ANPP leaders came to me. As I'm being brief now, please, can you challenge the legality of police permit? Why must we, as free citizens under a democratic government, ask for permit to exercise our freedom of expression? And I went to court, federal court here. The court delivered judgment in their favor to the fact that no Nigerian should ask for police permit to demonstrate either for or against the government. The police went to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal unanimously upheld the judgment of the lower court and went further to say that demonstrations for or against the government of Nigeria is an extension, part of your freedom of expression.
I'm going to have to ask you to just hold that thought. We're going to continue in a moment. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the lawyer and human rights campaigner Femi Falana on the latest issue to raise his hackles, the arrest and detention of the convener of the Revolution Now movement, Omoyele Sowore. Stay with us. The Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, the hashtag Revolution Now is the top Twitter trend in Nigeria. It has been all week following protests in Abuja and Lagos by pro-democracy activists. Many of those protesters were tear-gassed and arrested as they were trying to demonstrate on the streets of two of Nigeria's main cities against what they see as the government's failure to move the country in the right direction. The demonstrations had been organized by the pro-democracy and opposition campaigner and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore. He was arrested over the weekend and accused of calling for the overthrow of the government of President Buhari. Well, one man who begs to differ is Nigeria's foremost human rights activist and respected senior lawyer, Femi Falana, who Mr. Sowore has asked to represent him. We'll speak some more to Mr. Falana in a moment, but first, let's take a listen to the government side setting out its case against Mr. Sowore.
There will not be any forceful takeover of government, and the DSS will not idle by, stand by, and watch people, self-serving people take laws into their hands. We will do all that is within the law to discharge our responsibility and ensure that there is peace in Nigeria beyond tomorrow. In a democracy, one of the highlights of democratic governance is periodic elections. If any person who had contested an election didn't succeed, all you need to do is to go back, rework your system and strategies, and indeed wait for another election. You cannot, in the middle of, shortly after an election, begin election in which one had participated. But I would not want to make comments about political issues. I want to limit the DSS to issues that concern public safety, to issues that concern our statutory mandate, to issues that has the Constitution that has enabled us to ensure and protect the internal security of Nigeria. Whether we will do that, it is not in doubt that we will do it. We will do it today, we will do it tomorrow, we will do it ever, as far as the entity Nigeria remains.
And that's a spokesman for the Department of State Security here in Nigeria. And the respected senior lawyer and human rights campaigner Femi Falana is with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And when we were on break, you and I had talked briefly about the letter of the law in Nigeria. Just to be clear, what is the law as far as public protests are concerned? Do people have to get permits from the police, or has it got to be approved by the police before it takes place?
Yeah, I was just telling you a couple of minutes ago how we won the battle for public protests in Nigeria. And for this, I must commend the AMPP leaders, former AMPP leaders, including the president.
That's a political party that used to
fought
be. Right.
that battle to a logical conclusion, and we won the battle. Secondly, in Abuja here, when the Jonathan administration disbanded the members of the Bring Back Our Guest campaigners led by Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, we went to court. Incidentally, the current MD, managing director of the NPA, Nigerian Post Authority, Adiza Bala Usman, was the first plaintiff in that case. We also won the battle. Based on these two fundamental decisions, the National Assembly in March 2015 amended the law to the effect that, notwithstanding the provisions of the Public Order Act and the Police Act, whenever there is a protest by Nigerians, the police shall provide security. In other words, protesters shall now be protected by the police. That is the law. If, as is being alleged, any group decides to demonstrate, the law has not determined when you can demonstrate. Even on the day of election, you can demonstrate. After the election, you can demonstrate. And that was what happened in 2003 by the MPP leaders. In fact, beyond, Sowore didn't go to court this time. General Muhammadu Buhari had already filed an election petition in court. Notwithstanding the pendency of the election petition at the Court of Appeal, he decided to mobilize his members, his supporters, for a protest. In fact, they were going to have protests around the country. But the protest, was disbanded in Kano. People were injured. We then went to court. So they won that battle for us.
In other words, there's precedent.
Of course. So you cannot now, and even when the current chairman of the APC, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, was president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Olusegun Obasanjo administration tried many times to prevent them from embarking on strike and street protest. Again, we had to go to court. But we had gone beyond this level. And this is my pain. Under the Olusegun Obasanjo regime, the government will have to approach the court. We have information that the following Nigerians are planning to disrupt.
So there needs to be a court order.
Can you get an order for us?
Yeah. So there needs to be a court order stopping.
But you cannot now just sit down in the office of the IG or Director General of State Security or as a pressman, the publicity secretary, to go and tell the whole world an offense has been committed. You have no powers to do that. You must go to court and get an order to violate or to abridge any of the rights entrenched in Chapter 4 of the Constitution.
But what about the responsibilities of the protesters? Do they have to go to the police and say, we're going to do this and we require permission?
No.
Because, I've heard many times the police saying this is not approved.
No, we're trying to get the police to appreciate the current state of the law.
Right.
Permit for protest has been declared null and void, illegal and unconstitutional since July 2005. And that is the state of the law. We have now gone beyond that to say the police shall protect those who want to demonstrate against the government or for the government.
But can the police make the argument that if you're planning to marshal a lot of people who will, in other words, is there a collateral angle to that law, a matter of interpretation, that if you're going to marshal, thousands of people out on the streets, potentially disrupting not only traffic, but people's lives and so on and so forth, and potentially endangering people, if there are going to be people who are protesting against what you're doing, that you would need to have the police grant you sort of permission,
No,
and the police assess its capacity to maintain law and order in those
No,
circumstances?
what the police will be required to do in this circumstance is to meet the organizers of the protest. Please, can you march here or there? But you cannot stop them. I mean, I remember an incident in Accra. I was there in 2007. The country was marking its, I think, 50th anniversary of its independence. And Ghana became independent in 1957. And there was going to be a protest by a group which believed that Ghana was not yet independent. It was only independent, flag independent. We have no cause to celebrate. The Inspector General of Police had to approach the court. These people are trying to march around the stadium where we're expecting foreign guests. The court said, yes, we cannot stop them from protesting, but we will not allow them to protest around the stadium. Thou shalt protest in another part of the city. And that was what happened on that occasion. We have also got to that level too, where we had that incident. In this country, when the federal government approached the court, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress were planning a protest. Please, can you stop them? And of course, the court granted the order. We had to persuade the labor leaders when they said, no, regardless of this order, because it was obtained behind us, we are going to march. Say no, you will observe the order. Allow us, as the late Shifa Emir and my humble self, to go to court and set it aside before you can march. And we did that on that occasion because the court was presented with a one-sided version.
So let me ask you this. What do you think then is the justification, the legal justification for a court in Abuja deciding to grant the Department of State Security leave to detain Mr. Sowore for a further 45 days, if there is no legal justification for him being detained under the supposed guise of trying to carry out a revolution?
I think the court, as it did say, had only one side of the argument. It was an ex parte application. And I'm sure by the time Sowore's side is presented, the court will have to review the order vis-a-vis Section 35 of the Constitution, which prescribes that every Nigerian reasonably suspected to have committed an offense shall be brought before a court of law within 24 hours in a place like Lagos or Abuja, where you have courts within a radius of 40 kilometers. If it's beyond that, not more than 48 hours. Up till now, Sowore has not been charged with any offense, as understood by the Constitution. Therefore, the court will have to weigh which one is higher in the hierarchy of superiority of laws, the Constitution or the Terrorism Act.
Right. So are you planning to challenge his continued detention within the 45 days?
I already have instructions of Mr. Sowore, because I met him yesterday. He already envisaging that he might be detained through the court. So he has given us instructions.
And you met him. What is his condition? I mean,
he's in very high spirits.
Right.
He's very okay.
He must have felt considerably more confident having spoken to you.
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I must commend the State Security Service here. Even before I met him yesterday, he had been allowed to speak to me on phone, which is in line with the provisions of the Constitution as well as the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that before a suspect makes a statement in a police station, he or she is entitled to demand to consult his or her lawyer. And if he has no means of getting a lawyer, the state shall engage the services of a lawyer for him or her. That's where we are. And that's why I want Nigerians and the government in particular to appreciate where we are as far as the human rights regime in Nigeria is concerned. We've left this stage of somebody going to tell the media somebody has committed an offense. In fact, it's now an offense to parade suspects in our country.
But
you can't engage the media trial.
Yeah.
You must take the person to court. And when you haven't done it, you now go to court. Please, authorize us to detain him? What of the period he has been kept in detention without trial?
Okay, let's take a break. Please stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the senior lawyer and human rights activist Femi Falana. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now to the trials and tribulations of the pro-Iranian Shia group, the Islamic movement in Nigeria, and its leader, Sheikh El-Zakzaky. After weeks of turmoil, with its supporters taking to the streets and leading to some even losing their lives, Sheikh El-Zakzaky has been granted permission to seek medical treatment abroad. Sheikh Zakzaky and his wife have been held in custody since 2015, and his health has deteriorated rapidly. Recently, according to his son, the Nigerian authorities until now refused to allow him to travel. And last week, his movement, the IMN, was proscribed by the government as a terrorist organization and barred from holding public demonstrations. But recently, amid watertight security with all roads blocked by stern-looking armed police, a court in Kaduna granted Sheikh El-Zakzaky some reprieve. Well, the lawyer who represents Sheikh El-Zakzaky is the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, who is also one of this country's most respected human rights activists. And Mr. Falana is with me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. So what exactly does this court order reprieving Sheikh El-Zakzaky mean? Where can he and his wife go to? I understand they're heading to India.
Well, in the first place, I can tell you, for me, that was not one of the applications I would ordinarily make as a Nigerian. That I have to go to court to ask that citizens of Nigeria be flown abroad for treatment. But because of the collapse of our health facilities, we had to do that. As far as the law is concerned, when a Nigerian or anybody is detained by the government, the duty is on the government to ensure that the person remains alive. If he stands in trial, he must be alive to stand trial. Hence, the courts have repeatedly maintained that where the facilities in the prison are not sufficient, adequate to cater for the medical